Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive, or if you think like one, and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve extraordinary results. And no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. Today I speak with Laurie Jones. She is the CEO of Avocet Communications, which is a marketing and branding agency. And Laurie has a really interesting set of views around how to use marketing as, if you like, the forgotten lever on the CEO dashboard. Many CEOs come from sales and love customer interactions. Others come from operations, finance, and more focused on the internal workings of the company. And both groups often overlook the power of taking a bold stance in your positioning as a company. Many companies are bland, and she explains what it might look like to take a bold stance and to do that in a realistic and effective way. So enjoy this conversation with Laurie Jones, the CEO of Avocet Communications. Hi, Laurie, and welcome to the show.
Oh, it's so nice to be here, Richard. Thank you so much.
No, I'm looking forward to this. I know you've had decades in marketing, and you're now running your CEO of Avocet Communications. And I'd love to really get in straight away, really, with your success formulae, right? How have you succeeded as a leader, but also how do you help other leaders succeed and other firms succeed? Because that's your business, right? Is helping get messages out there. So before we jump in, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about what is Avocet and how did you end up in the top job?
So Avocet is a fully integrated marketing communications firm. What that means is that we integrate your owned assets, which is strategic development and branding, trade show, all of those things that the brand has total control over, with earned media, which is PR, and then content earned, and shared media, which is content, and then paid, which is all paid media. So we integrate all those things together to ultimately create a fully outbound, awareness-based program that increases exponential growth for our clients. How I landed in the top job, I laugh quite often. This is a family business, and I interviewed 21 years before I was even offered the initial job. So that is a lot to be said for my father. After all those years, still wanted me to come work for him. Was one of the greatest joys of my life. The day I had not planned on it. I was a broadcast journalism major. Second semester, my senior year, decided it wasn't for me, and we had an opportunity. My father had the firm starting in 1980. We had the opportunity for me to go work for him, and I said yes. And it was the second best yes I've ever said in my life. The first, or the second rather, was saying yes to my husband when he asked me to marry him.
Nice. Yeah, really nice. So okay, so you're running this integrated communications agency. What do you see chief executives, when do they do marketing well and when don't they? How does the chief executive help or hinder that effort to really create growth for a brand?
Yeah, and I think it depends on the size of the business, right? There are a lot of CEOs that are startup and they're handling marketing on their own. And then, of course, there are a lot of companies that might be going after their Series A or, and have 20 employees. What does that look like versus someone who might have 100, 200, 300 employees? So there's quite a wide range. And I think it also changes a little bit based on industry. But if I'm take all of those elements and put it into one sweet spot on areas that I think can change or hinder, it's not getting in the way of marketing and sales, realizing that marketing and sales need to be aligned, and product should be at the table as well in a very, very big way, and being bold enough to want to make a difference in the mindset of the audience. There's nothing that will hinder a company from growth than wanting to look like or wanting to sound like everyone else in the industry. Break out of it, differentiate. And that is where ultimately I think CEOs can help their teams impact the bottom line.
Yeah. So do CEOs, so I get it, there is a life cycle of companies and people at different stages are doing different things. But what I'm hearing is that, yeah, that willingness to change perspectives, change mindsets. And that requires it does require a bit of bravery, right? Because at least you know what you've got at the moment and you know you're generating some results.
Right.
So that's where incremental thinking comes in. It's like, well, we can just press a bit harder on the marketing engine or on the sales engine and so forth. So how do you kind of see that shift of, or how do you help CEOs think through, do I really want to change? Do I really want to rock the boat? Right.
Right.
We've all seen marketing campaigns that have backfired, for example, right? And
oh yeah,
haven't
you can
served.
be too bold, but you also don't want to be boring. And that's our mantra. We take brands from boring to brave, right? And if you imagine a range of acceptability, so imagine a scale, and there is a 1 on the left-hand side and a 10 on the right-hand side. And boring is a 1, 10 is a bold. Within your industry, there's a propensity for how bold you can go. So keeping audience in perspective and defining how bold we can go is the key to that, because you can take it too far. There's no doubt about it. But what we like to do is on that range of acceptability, what is the strategy? So we take a look at differentiation, points of parity versus points of differentiation. Studying the competition, listening to our audience via reviews, listening to customer interviews, really finding out a lot about the brand and its perception in the marketplace. And what we find all too often is there is this big cluster, if you will, of brands that are 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. Why not? And they're boring. They sound like everyone else. They look like everyone else. Why not? If they're clustered right there, why not be a 6? Why not be a 7? And sometimes you need to manage it. If the competitors are really clustered, at a 1, 2, 3, maybe a 5 is all the industry can handle at this stage. So we systematically go in and devise a program with messaging and communication and tactics that definitely moves the brand to that side, knowing that differentiator in the mindset of the audience will help push all those brands aside, maintain them there. And then, you stand out. And when you stand out, guess what? You get noticed. And when you get noticed, guess what? It increases your growth of the business.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you were saying that, I was thinking around industries that I often work in. I work in tech and telecoms, software as a service, digital, these kind of things. And yeah, you're right. There's a lot of fashion and a lot of clustering around similar things. Lots and lots of even fresh software as a service players. Their websites all look a bit the same, right? Their technology is perhaps different if you just scratch beneath the surface, but in terms of the overall feel you get for this company, for the company, you don't particularly get a strong vibe one way or the other.
No, you don't. And so you bring up something very interesting. So a lot of tech companies are started by engineers, and engineers are, they're brilliant, right? They are developing the product. They're developing the solution, whatever it might be. They have an idea, they can build it. But the product, what we find in most situations is these same brilliant minds believe that the product will sell itself. Guess what? It does not. We've proven it time and time again with our clients, whether they be technology or SaaS clients, that once you understand people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? So they don't buy the feature, they buy the benefit of that. And if we can shift the mindset of our messaging and our go-to-market strategies to more benefit, I sound like a broken record. We've been talking about that for years and years and years, but most tech companies are comfortable with features. So when we shift that mindset to the more provocative side of messaging and creating excitement about how this will change their life, their business, whatever it might be, that is when we impact. And from a challenger standpoint, this is a lot of challenger brands typically, right? And from a competitive standpoint, we need to decide through our strategic development process, do we want to challenge someone? That can be very difficult in a lot of tech spaces, or do we want to challenge something? And that is where we can really help, move again on that range of acceptability brands, to a 5, 6, or even a 10. We do have brands who are the 10 and want to aspire to be that 10.
This is interesting. Yeah, I like to say when I'm working with my clients on their impact and multiplying their impact, it's at the center of strategy, leadership, and purpose. And actually, often purpose is a bit of a weak spot, and people think, perhaps we just need to focus on the strategy piece or the leadership piece. But purpose is important in so many ways, and actually knowing what you stand for and what you really are for as a company and what you're not. Sometimes people have that, or it's not as defined, but often it's not that clear, especially for older companies where the original founder's vision is perhaps a little bit diluted, and people are now into, well, we just got to deliver this quarter's results and then the next quarter's.
Right.
But actually, as a CEO, part of your job is to put some heart back into that and to say, what is it that I'm standing for as a leader? And what is it that we want to stand for as a business? And I think when you have that, then marketing does become a lot easier, right? Because it's not just putting a new splash of coat on.
Painting your pig on a lipstick, whatever you want to call
it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so the purpose, the vision, the mission, the values all have to be aligned with marketing no matter what. And one of the first things that we start out with from a strategy standpoint is getting the leadership team at the table and understanding what their vision, mission, and values are. That, especially in a day where culture is so important as well, is a litmus test for ultimately what we can do to move the brand. And defining that vision, maybe even through a vivid vision. So as CEO, where do you see the company 3 years from now? And how are we going to get there? Not just from a business plan standpoint, but making sure every employee within the organization understands how we're going to get there. Write the vision as though it's futuristic. Write the vivid vision as though, it's year 2025. And we've just done A, B, C, and D, and we're celebrating because of Y. That is where you really can, I think, catapult and keep the team on the same bus and in the seats that are going to impact the bottom line for the business.
Yeah, I see a lot of it. Yeah, absolutely. I see it a lot. Until people have that, then everything else is woolly. You can't really have a strategy. You can't have a brand strategy. You can't lead people. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and not answer those bigger questions.
I face it in my own organization. The goal of every team member surrounding me is free up Lori, so that I can focus on the business instead of the trenches.
Yes.
It's just a fact of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find when I work with my clients, one of the first things we address is almost always, how do I work on the next level of activity for me, right? How do I level up? It's always there, right? It has to start in our diaries.
And it's important for growth, right? Because if we stay at the level of activity that we operate in day to day, how are we able to vision the future? How are we able to build the team around the future? And that is where we, a US saying, get stuck in the mud.
Hello, it's Richard here with a quick interlude. These conversations are all about upgrading how you think about creating impact. So here's a resource to help you do just that whilst staying fast and focused. The CEO's Checklist for Challenging Times is a quick way to enhance your thinking and detect blind spots, even when things are moving incredibly fast and you're not sure what's going to happen next. You can get this powerful checklist of 17 world-class strategies by heading to xquadrant.com/go/challenging times checklist with a hyphen between each of those 3 last words. Now, back to the conversation. Yeah, I'm thinking about how CEOs, again, get in the way of this process of clarifying branding. Obviously, there is a sense of clarity about the business and the values we've talked about. In my observation, but I'd love to get your view, is CEOs are often, they either come from the sales side, so that they love the customer conversations, the deals, and that kind of aspect, or they come, or perhaps they come from a slightly more internal focused side. They've been the CFO or COO or another internal role, and they're kind of a little bit more internal focused, right? They're just kind of making sure the engine is running. There's probably a little bit of a shortage. I'm thinking of CEOs who naturally, turn to marketing and branding as the go-to lever, I suppose, for success. I'm just wondering what your observations are about that, or whether you see certain CEOs who really get success versus those who don't really use the lever.
Right. So I think number one, alignment's important, and number two, they've got to give permission. Right. So being bold can be daunting. It means so many different things to so many different people. That is why we've got our range of acceptability. How do you define bold, right? So once you provide the mindset and the okay for the team to move and be more progressive with their approaches, I think that is very, very important. That then creates the alignment internally, right? We can take this to the next step. And let me tell you a quick story about a brand that we've been working on for 14 years. I'll never forget several agencies up for this piece of business, very large retailer in the United States. And I went into pitch, didn't think a lot about it. I went on my own, and I walk into his office, and he's got his entire senior team standing. The pitch was a stand-up pitch. Never experienced something like that in my life. That immediate reaction, the body language of me walking into the room and totally not expecting what I did, told me immediately that this is a bold leader and that he wants to push the needle. So I had a couple, ideas in my hip pocket regarding where we could take the brand and what it was going to take to ultimately move the brand to surpass competitors that had the awareness in the market. This brand did not. So I knew my audience based on that quick move. We presented the approach. He bought it, but by having the entire senior team there, it told the very small marketing team at the time, okay, we can move the needle. It told the store head that, okay, we can be more progressive here. And ultimately what we've done is that brand was $20 million 14 years ago. It's 125 million today. And the competitors are, you never wish ill will on a competitor at any point in time ever, but we've had 2 competitors move out of the market. So that's what bold branding, bold marketing, bold leadership, bold mindsets do to catapult people in a industry.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, one of the things I work on when I'm often studying with execs is to really get their sense of what would it be to, what would you care so much about that you want to 100 exit? What is it that is so meaningful to you that you'd stop at nothing to achieve it? And the other thing that comes out for me is this question of perception, because obviously branding is about changing market perception in a way. And my role is less about market perception, but it is working with leaders and often about how they are perceived by key stakeholders in and perhaps outside, but also within the company. And I always say, perception lags reality. It always lags reality. So even if you've become the most innovative company out there, the market will not see that because they're going to assume that you're the laggards that you always used to be. On a personal level, even if you are no longer the micromanaging leader you used to be, but really empowering and etc., most people will still imagine you as the old micromanager from last year because they're not focused on you. They're focused on themselves, right? They're not watching things change. And so often one of my roles is to help create environments where the perception can catch up with, well, first of all, create the reality, but then make sure perception catches up. Because in leadership, if the people don't perceive it, then it almost doesn't exist because people are still going to be demotivated or fed up with you, even if you changed. And the same as I think it might be same on a brand level, right? That a company can make internal changes and transformations, but somehow you need to get that message
Well, and it needs to be repeatable, right? And it needs to be believable, and it needs to be motivational. All
Yeah.
too often, perception is reality. We know that, and people's realities are all different. So if you have a starting point on ultimately what we can do to change that, so creating and changing perception are equally difficult, right?
Mm.
There might be something very negative in the marketplace that we need to overcome. The way in which a product launch was not ready and it went out to market. And so we've got to overcome that negative perception, right? Or the perception of something very, very positive on the opposite side of that. The product launch was so successful, we couldn't deliver on time. How do we overcome that? There are millions of different examples, right? Yes. But it's placing a stake in the ground on ultimately, back to passion, back to the vision on what we stand for and how we're going to take care of that situation, whether it be something super positive or a negative that we need to overcome.
Absolutely. So let's move on. I want to give you a few quick fire questions as we move towards the end here. Just coming out of your own leadership experience, it's always good just to kind of try and distill some of that wisdom. So what's the favorite quote that you might live by or use with your teams, or is a personally important for you?
Well, you're going to catch me off guard on that one. I think I'm going to bring my father into this. So my father and I worked side by side for 25 years. It was absolutely incredible. And he retired about 7 years ago. And unfortunately, we lost him prior to COVID. And one thing very early on that he shared with me, and I'll never forget this, it will stay with me forever. We were coming out of a meeting with Coors in their Coors Tech brand, as a matter of fact, in Colorado. And I was so in awe over what I was hearing him talk about in that meeting, that the wisdom that he shared was so great. It was so deep, and I was in awe. And we came out of the meeting, we got in the car, we went to lunch all the time, went and got a bite to eat. And while we were sitting down, I said, I'm truly in awe. I can't wait until I become the expert that you are. And he said to me, Lori, I'm not an expert because I learn each and every day. And so we can form expertise on a topic, but that topic's always changing. So we've got to continue to learn. We've got to continue to listen and know that there's always something around the corner that we can do better.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. What about, do you have a favorite app that you go to? What app on your phone would you not live without?
Well, personal app is Yoga with Adriene. So I am a yogi, and it's what helps me balance my work life. And I'm a mom of 4 kids and husband who's very successful and busy as well. So my personal app is Yoga with Adriene. On a professional standpoint, PQ, the Positive Intelligence app, is an incredible app for just, in a tense situation, really normalizing how you respond in that situation through quick, different scenarios that you can do with your hands, your mind, to just calm the situation down and respond in a positive, proactive way.
Yeah, nice. What about a book that's really influenced you?
Outside of the Bible, which is my go-to each and every day, I think God's wisdom is something that really drives me and is very, very important. I would say Good to Great. It's very motivational, and it's one of those life-changing mindsets. Again, always learning, always growing, growing, never becoming that expert, that can really motivate teams and leaders alike.
Yeah, fantastic. What about what advice would you give your 20-year-old self if you could go back in time?
Definitely to listen more. I think a lot of college kids come out of school feeling as though they know it all because of the degree that they have. And the fact of the matter is that it's a bridge. College is a bridge. And the day you enter the doors of your first real job for the first time, is to ultimately listen and never stop.
Thank you. Thank you for those. Put you on the spot, ask you a few questions. It's nice just to get some of that wisdom. So here's maybe the final question, really, where as we kind of start to think about wrapping up. No matter how much we've achieved, there's always a next level to get to. So Laurie, what's your next level, right? What are you going to need to do differently yourself to multiply your impact, right? To move beyond where you're at.
I need to let go. We've grown 42% this year. The agency has, and in the US, and I know this is happening globally, we have a hiring issue. In order for me to get to the next stage of the company life cycle and grow it exponentially, and maintain the clients and the team that we have, I've got to let go, let everyone do their job, get the right people in the right seats, the right expertise, so that I can continue to vision where we're going next.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's often the case, right, that we're always having to let go. It's like parenting or whatever, you're always having to
oh my gosh, it's so hard, isn't it? And when you have a business that that is a family business, and I own 100% of it now, it's my baby. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more important than the 4 children and my husband, but this is still a baby, and it's very important and close and emotional for me.
So if people want to find out more about you and about the company, how do they get in touch?
So please email me. My email address is long, by the way. It's Laurie, L-O-R-I, at Avocet, Avocet Communications.com. And you can also tweet me at Laurie Jones.
There we go. Perfect. Laurie, hey, it's been great to talk. Thank you again for these thoughts on bold marketing and the relationship to the CEO. I think it's been really interesting. And wish you all the best as you continue to let go in the business.
Thank you, Richard, very much. I deeply appreciate the conversation.
Goodbye now. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at xquadrant.com.